Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Big Time Boxing. I am Al Bernstein, and this edition is going to be a special one because I get to visit with a gentleman who I have known for most of his life. He is a super talented boxing personality, broadcaster, podcaster. Has just done remarkable work as his career has begun to really take off. That's Dan Canobbio, and in a moment we're going to be chatting with him, and we're going to zero in on his role in ppv.com, which is a very unique service that we highlighted with both Lance Pugmire and Jim Lampley when they were on the show. And we're going to be talking to Dan about that and the next edition that they'll have of the ppv.com. We're also going to talk with him about his work as a podcaster, and we're going to dig into the February 1st card, which I think is really a wonderful card with David Benavidez and David Morrell. So with that said, let me welcome in Dan Canobbio. Dan, how are you? You're a busy bee these days in the sport of boxing, which is wonderful.
Al, what an intro. First off, let me just say how I am honored to be on your show because I consider you not only a friend, but also someone I've looked up to in this industry, an idol. Some of the other words? A role model, someone I can ask advice. Mostly a friend, though, because we've gone back so long. You and my dad go back forever, and just going to fights, watching you do your thing, and always me as a young kid saying, I want to do that. I want to do what Al Bernstein's doing one day. And I feel like I'm kind of getting there. I feel like those are tough shoes to fill, and it's hard shoes to go after. It's a little bit of a different media world these days, as we'll get into on this episode. But it is an honor and a privilege to join you, Al, and it's really nice to be on the other side of the coin, getting as a guest. I'm usually the one pestering media types and boxers, so this is a treat.
That's true. Yeah. The two roles are it's funny when you do both those roles, they are different and there's a different shade to it. Well, you have we're going to get into the specifics, but you have done a remarkable job of working your way into the media in boxing, and you made a very salient point that this is a different world now because it with the digital things that are available to people and the way you do it is different. And the perfect example of that is you and Chris Algieri are doing the Inside Boxing podcast, which is sponsored and powered by ppv.com. And it's a really great listen. You and Chris are terrific together. And what powers that, as I mentioned, is ppv.com. And that's a very different kind of media creature, if you will, because for people that don't know what that is, it is when you order through ppv.com, which you don't need a subscription to, I might add, you can watch the fight with the regular broadcast and everything. But what you also get is an ability to see comments live, texted by you, Chris Algieri, Jim Lampley, and Lance Pugmire, all four great commentators, and they can interact with you. It's such a unique concept, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. I'm not just saying that because they pay the bill, but they really are a great service because it's something new for boxing fans and it's something different.
Yeah.
We're living in an era where you have to sign up and you have to lock in for a year. Where with ppv.com, you don't have to do that. So that's one great thing about it. Another thing, too, is the type of experience you're getting on Fight Night, like you just illustrated. The live interactive chat is a game changer. So you get to talk to Jim Lampley, ask him a question. You get to talk to Chris Algieri, ask him a technical question. You get to talk to me. I'm usually last on that list. Or you can talk to Lance Pugmire, too, who's a great reporter. So you get a little bit of everything with our PPV Dream Team. And mostly, it's just like a deal for fans. It's just you can stream it to your phone and your tablet. And another thing, too, that they're just great people to work with them. I'm able to go to these big fights, and I'm able to do a lot of content during the week, whether I'm talking to Canelo or I'm talking to Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, any fighter, and getting to know them and bring fun content and just bring more eyeballs to what ppv.com is doing. So I think it was a very natural fit for Chris and I and our platform at Inside Boxing Live. So I've been loving working alongside PPV.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And as you point out, there's all this additional content that you guys do leading up to the fights, and that's fun as well. And the idea now that we we all are used to kind of multitasking in our viewing. So we are all used to watching something, reading something while we're actually concentrating on the thing we're watching and while we're listening to somebody else. It's fascinating how really everyone's minds kind of has adapted to this concept.
It's kind of crazy. You're right, Al. Like I know you're on Twitter and you're pretty active on there. And when I'm watching, like, say, a football game, like, I'll watch the Manning cast over the traditional broadcast. I'll go to
Hmm.
both, and then I'll be looking at my phone and Twitter, see what everyone is talking about, see
Yeah,
what is everyone saying about this game, or is there any funny memes? Is there anything
yeah,
additional content? Because now, like, the broadcast alone somehow is just not enough. So that's where PPV comes into mind, where you can have the broadcast on your screen, and then on the right side you can talk to you can. Another thing too is the fans can talk with each other. A lot of the time that happens,
right.
and there's a little bit of a forum. There's a little bit of a community being built, which is really cool, and it's just kind of like where media is headed now. As you can see, broadcast media has changed so much, where you're getting more personality driven. So they want to hear from Peyton and Eli. They want to hear from Pat McAfee. They want to hear from, in boxing. Luckily, they want to hear from me and Chris. So that's a really fun thing. And PPV has been great in terms of, like, getting out in the forefront of offering fans a different type of experience on fight night.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And of course, the next one up for that is the David Benavidez David Morrell fight, and a good card as well. We'll chat about a couple of the fights underneath as well. But that one coming here to Las Vegas is, I think, going to be a very important match in boxing on a bunch of different levels, because everybody has wanted to see David Benavidez in. They wanted very badly to see him fight Canelo. Right now, that doesn't seem feasible. So the next best thing is David Morrell, who is kind of a phenom, an 11-0, not a ton of experience in terms of professional fights. And interestingly, most of his amateur fights were not even on the highest level, but he is just one of those people that is excellent. And David Benavidez, of course, at 28, with tons of experience, 29-0. This is a match that, when you go into it, for commentators and for people that are going to be talking about it, it's a fascinating stylistic matchup to look at.
I love this fight. I mean, this is a throwback to when you got into this sport and what made everyone fall in love with boxing, because these are two guys that are under the age of 30, two undefeated fighters, two fighters that don't necessarily need to take this fight. Like, Benavidez
Right.
could wait around. He could try to keep trying for Canelo. He can try to keep finding fights at 175, because let's keep in mind, this is both fighters only have one fight at 175 pounds, and you can make a case that both didn't look spectacular. I think
Right.
fans were a little harsh on either guy. I thought they did enough to win, obviously, but it has all the makings of, like, a throwback type of fight where both guys want to get to the top level. And at this point for them, I believe it's 175, and that's where they're going to stay, unless Canelo decides, I will fight Benavidez at 168, which I think he would then go down. But if they are staying at 175, then there's Beterbiev and there's Bivol, and there's Undisputed there, and there's a lot of money in those types of fights. But this is almost like it's almost like a Final Four at
Yeah.
175, even though they only have two fights total at 175, Benavidez and Morrell. So there's really high stakes in terms of what each guy can get after this fight. But in terms of the technical stuff and inside of the ring, we're looking at a guy in Benavidez that throws a ton of punches, is a nightmare inside of the ring.
Yeah.
It was always going to come forward. And then Morrell, he kind of gets labeled as kind of like a mover, a boxer, but he's much more than that. He has really heavy hands. He has great technique. And like I said, under the age of 30, a lot of the small criticisms I hear about Benavidez is he's fighting guys that are a little bit, past their prime. Like Andrade was a little bit past his prime. Plant was under 30, but he had taken a pretty good beating from Canelo. Like, you can't say that about Morrell. You might make the case that he's a little green, but I don't think so. I think this is an outstanding matchup, a great main event with high stakes. It's like a throwback. It's like a real boxer fans, like, dream type of matchup.
Yeah, it really is. And I think with David Benavidez especially, we always thought he was going to end up at 175. His body frame certainly indicates that. And 168 was a good weight for him because he was bigger and he was facing men just a little bit smaller than the 175. But I think 175 will suit him. And Morrell too, I think, has the body type to do it. You mentioned that in their other fight at 175, they won decisions, and they weren't super dominant, but when you're moving up in another weight, it's a different experience. And I think the interesting thing about this fight is you mentioned the volume punching of Benavidez, and then Morrell, while he boxes, he's got 9 KOs in his 11 fights, and there was a time when people thought of him almost as a power puncher totally, right? And then as they watched him fight a little bit, they evolved into knowing he had some boxing skills. So it's going to be a really intriguing matchup. The one question you mentioned about Morrell, whether this fight is rushed for him, do you think there's any possibility that that's the case?
I think maybe like 10 years ago, this fight would never have happened because,
Right,
we were still in that era of let's build these guys up to 20-0,
right.
fighting a bunch of no-hopers. But like that's not the case anymore. I know we're
Mhm.
living in a different era of boxing. There might be some fans out there that still pine for the 80s and 90s, but it's almost like not in terms of popularity, I would say, but in terms of matchmaking now in boxing, there's a lot more urgency. So when you see a guy like Morrell, who we've been able to watch a lot too, there's never been more access to boxing. Whether it's DAZN, whether it's
Yeah,
ESPN Plus, whether it's YouTube, you're watching guys now that you would never normally see even
right.
10 years ago before the streaming era. So with Morrell, we've seen him. We've seen him a lot. He's headlined Showtime fights. He's fought on
Yeah,
undercards. We've seen these guys now. So 11-0 is not the same 11-0 as 10, 20 years ago. It's you get in that ring and let's see what you got. Like, because I do think he's very talented. I do think he's very good, and I do think he is a live underdog. So I don't think he's rushed. But do I believe that Benavidez is a better boxer and an all-around better fighter, has more experience? Obviously, yes. So
yeah,
we'll see. But there's
yeah.
a
Well,
lot of X factors in this fight.
that's why they fight the fights. And
That's right.
I announced a number of the last few of the fights that Benavidez and Morrell have done in these last couple of years, and there's no question it felt like this was a destination fight that people were gonna get to. And the other thing about fighters fighting maybe at 11-0 in a fight where you thought they would have had more fights. Boxers don't fight that often anymore. They only fight twice a year. So
Yeah.
if you wait to be 20-0, you're going to be waiting years before you get a chance to fight. So that's another factor. Now, this card is a really good card, and the fight on there that is could steal any card is the fight with Brandon Figueroa and Stephen Fulton Jr. I did their first fight. It was a fight of the year candidate when they had it. It was a terrific fight. I thought the scoring was a little askew because I thought it was closer than the judges had it with for in terms of them scoring it a little wider for Fulton. But it was very exciting. It was a great match. But now we have the rematch several years later, and the circumstances have changed a little bit. The fight has a little more urgency for Stephen Fulton Jr., who since that has suffered some setbacks. He lost to Naoya Inoue. He did not perform well against Carlos Castro in winning a disputed decision. And for Figaroa, he knocked out
Castro.
Castro, the man that went the distance with Fulton. So this fight now has a different feel to it, doesn't it?
It does, and it's at a different weight class. It's at featherweight, but I couldn't agree more with you about Fulton. I feel like he's at a career crossroads. The loss to Inoue, he got wiped out in that fight. He made a lot of money, and I'm happy for him, and he
Yeah,
deserved it. But that was a major setback for him because not only did he suffer his first loss, and he got beat down pretty good. He didn't fight for a while. He was kind of frozen out of the picture. A lot of times you see that in current boxing. These guys get these exorbitant paydays, and you don't hear about them. But I think it's just more than that too. I think he had some squabbles with management or promoters. Other than that, like in that Castro fight, I did not like what I saw. I thought he lost the fight.
Yeah,
And I know
I
he was
agree.
unhappy in the fight week that he wasn't on the main card. He was pretty unhappy that he was on the free portion. So there's a lot of like turmoil with Stephen Fulton. But now, I mean, he's co-main event to one of the first pay-per-views of the year on Amazon Prime and PPV.com. He's fighting a worthy opponent, so we'll see what he's got here. But you can make an argument that this is a make or break type of fight for him in a brand new weight class. And you talk about their first fight; they combined to throw 1,700 punches in the
Amazing.
first fight. Is back and forth. I do agree with you with the scoring. It's really hard to score these types of fights because we don't know what the
Yeah.
judges usually like. I feel like the judges, from what I've seen, and you would have seen a lot more boxing than me or anyone. It seems like the fighter that comes forward is given a lot more credit in today's boxing. I feel like Figaroa is the guy that's going to come forward. I think Figaroa has a little more left in the tank. Has the power. Fulton's not a power puncher. Figueroa is, and I think
Right.
this fight will come down to power.
Yeah, and Figueroa, interestingly, was coming forward in the first fight, but the judges gave Fulton credit, and to a great extent, I agree with it. I just didn't think it was. I thought it was too wide for very good counterpunching. But I just thought those rounds were so close that, I think two of the judges had a 4-point win for Fulton. That just felt outside the box. But your analysis is perfect, and it's going to be a terrific fight, that's for sure. So that's on February 1st. You're going to be there with ppv.com, giving all your comments, along with Chris Algieri and Jim Lampley and Lance Pugmire, and that's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to be in Las Vegas all during the weekend. Mandatory attendance by you at my music show on Thursday at the Tuscany Casino
Where
at
are we
8
at?
p.m. I'm going to be peering into the audience to see if you're there.
What night?
Thursday night. So
I'm
if you
there.
come by, I want you to be there because you and I, you talked about it's not actually mandatory.
No,
but
it is. For me, it is.
But it'd be a lot of fun. You and I, we've known each other since you were a young man. And of course, your dad, Bob Canobbio, the founder of CompuBox, plays such a major role in boxing that it's staggering. He's literally has changed the habits of and the way announcers work in broadcasting the sport of boxing. And it was destined, I think, for you to do what you're doing now. But I give you all the credit in the world, Dan, because you have figured out. You went into it with, I think, a very clever game plan of figuring out all the way the multimedia could be used by you with hard work and knowledge of the sport to kind of figure out your way into these moments. And now you're seeing the fruits of those labors.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I had a lot of experience growing up, just being around you, being around Jim Lampley at HBO, being around guys at Showtime, being around Bob Papa, being around everyone, and just watching it and learning. That's the best experience you can get, I think, is on the job. And like, not everyone's as fortunate to be around the sport that closely. But after that, I was able to take jobs at MLB Network. I took jobs at CBS Sports. I took jobs at Bleacher Report, and while I was there, I learned all sorts of media. I learned how the Twitter aspect of. I learned short form. I learned long form, and then I realized around 2017, it's like I have all this knowledge of boxing, and I have all these great resources. Like, let's just try a YouTube show. My brother Nick helped me produce it. My dad would help. He would help book guests, and you came on the show early on, and I was lucky enough to have. Yeah, exactly. So you just kind of work at it, and you kind of figure out the lay of the land in media. And now in 2024, 2025, it's all about short form. It's all about Twitter. It's all about TikTok, which is going to be banned in a week. It's all about Instagram. Wild. And it's all about, like, what I like to do is talk to the fighters and get some information out of them that you normally would not hear. A lot of times these fighters are asked the same types of questions. How was camp? How do you feel? Give me a prediction. And they're going through the motions, and they cannot wait till the interview is over. What I have been able to do for a little niche that I have found is ask them some silly stuff. Ask them some things about that we can get to learn their personality. Like with Canelo Alvarez, I was able to talk to him and introduce him to some new some English slang terms. And it does millions of views because you're seeing a side of Canelo you've never seen before. You're seeing a side of these fighters, and Al, you know this better than anyone. These fighters are wild people. Like they have great personalities.
They do.
They're showmen. So let's tap into that. So I've been able to be pretty successful when it comes to that. But I was able to put together everything that I've learned and experienced as a kid, growing up around boxing, and then like the experience that I talked about working in other media forms and other not boxing. And then I was able to find a really good landing spot with PPV that they support me 100%. They let me go and do whatever we want. They have a great budget and to do all this stuff. So I'm a very lucky guy.
Well, it's fun. I look forward to the continuing development of your career, and the ppv.com part of it is, I think, a really fun aspect. And again, on the February 1st broadcast of David Benavidez and David Morrell, you will hear Dan, and you'll hear Chris Algieri and Jim Lampley and Lance Pugmire, and check out his podcast with Chris, Inside Boxing. Dan, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been fun to check in. And down the road this year, hopefully I'll check back in with you for us to discuss a little bit more what's going on in the sport of boxing.
I would love that too. I will say this too, Al. I've been calling some fights, and it's really hard. And you are an analyst. It's really hard as an analyst that did not box. And I think I go back and I listen to a lot of your calls to kind of figure out how I want to shape what I want to say and what I want to see in there. So once again, I learned so much from you as a broadcaster. This has been very fun. I hope we can do it again. And yeah, I really enjoy this working in boxing. I really enjoy having you as a friend, Al. You're a good guy.
Well, it's a delight, and you know better than anybody that when you come in analysis, and I had 40 amateur fights that nobody knew about, but
No, you did not.
But I wasn't known
Did
as
you
a
really?
boxer, so yeah. But I wasn't known as a boxer, so what you know is that when you're in that role, you need to, number one, show that you do understand the sport, which you do, but you also need to bring other anecdotal, informational,
Exactly.
statistical insights along with it all, so that you're
Yep.
providing something past that. And you're great at doing that. I've heard you do when you've done analysis, and that's a key thing, right? So you zeroed in on that, and not everybody does.
Wait, so I've known you for 30 plus years. I did not know you laced them up and you were in the ring.
I did, yeah, in Chicago, Park District Boxing, amateur boxing for, about 30, 40 fights, and
What?
that was fun. It was a good experience. So
You
that
knock
part
any
was,
fools out?
I was very much, when you think of me, you might think of Jimmy Young from the old days, right?
All right.
Boxer, wanted to, I was playing baseball at the time, so I didn't want to
Yeah, don't get hurt.
jeopardize that, but I enjoyed all of it. And I was more of a boxer, but it was
You
fun.
got
I had
size
a good
though. You're a
time.
big guy.
Yeah, so it was a fun experience. But
Wow. Maybe I
anyway,
should lace them up.
Pardon?
Maybe I should lace them up for at least one fight. I know Chris Algieri wants to train me desperately.
There you go. Well,
I mean, he's one of the best.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what is interesting is to go and to the gym and even just spar and things. When after I got done with all that, and especially when I was involved in boxing in the early days, I'd go in with friends of mine and trainers and stuff, and just do a little sparring just to because it's fun to do. And that's what you should do, because you get a good feel for some of the things that go on inside the ring.
As you can see, the landscape now on the zone, there's YouTubers are boxing now. Like one of the guy I call fights with. The guy I call fight and the Most Valuable Prospect series, Wade Plem, super popular on YouTube, is fighting this weekend. First fight of his life at age 32. It's wild. I don't know if I can do that. I'm a little bit older. I kind of like my face. I like my career. I kind of want to keep that intact. So
yeah,
it's
not mandatory that you have an actual match. I don't want to push you into that.
Right,
but,
we don't need to go that far. Sparring,
no.
yes. Stepping in the ring,
though. Experiencing it would be good.
Yes.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for visiting, and we'll get back with you down the road and check in and talk some more boxing.
Thank you, Al.
So I hope that you enjoyed the conversation that we just had with Dan. Again, February 1st, you can check out the ppv.com as part of the pay-per-view telecast on David Benavidez and David Morrell. And we're going to have lots more for you in the coming weeks here on Big Time Boxing. Got some great guests mapped out. And we hope you will come back and join us. Take care, everybody.